A city where men are seen as an abomination, led by a powerful woman king, Nakoma. Nakoma was the only daughter of her father. Her heart, as hard as a rock, was as a result of the outrage evil she committed as a child. Every year, an army of women paraded the city, making sure there were no traces of a male. The third month of every year was known as the month of increase. In this month, the queen sends out 300 ladies to neighboring communities. They would stay there for 4 weeks, get pregnant, and return. Whenever the time of delivery came for the pregnant women, the queen's army would surround the clinic, waiting patiently to hear the cry of a male child. Once the cry of a male child was heard, the soldiers would enter into the labor room without the nurse's consent and slay the child immediately. A lot of female children were killed in the process because sometimes their cries were mistaken for the cry of a male child. The queen, who is also known as the woman king, always felt appeased when a male child was killed. Whenever a male trespassed into the city, he was brought straight to the queen, and she killed him on the spot. Nakoma was emotionally trampled upon as a child. Okada, the great city, had been ruled by only men in time past. Iripia, the queen, couldn't conceive a male child, subsequent to the numerous complications that arose during the conception of Nakoma. In the city of Okada, it was a crime for the king to be married to 2 wives, but the king was desperate for a male heir. Members of the royal council already started making plans to dethrone the king and give the position to a more qualified candidate who had a male child. The most qualified candidate, Aloha, was called the king of boys because of the number of sons he had. The king saw Aloha as a threat and knew he had to act fast. Iripia loved her daughter so much and was willing to trade anything for her. She went into Nakoma's room one night and patted her to bed. The king joined his wife Iripia in their daughter's room. When he saw that Nakoma was asleep, he asked his wife to join him back to their room to get rest. Iripia tried resisting the king's request at first, but had to live with him due to his persistence. When they entered into the room, the king asked Queen Iripia how she felt, while gently smoothing the back of her hair before offering her a glass of water to drink. Nakoma peeped through the slightly ajar door of her parents' room. After waking up from a frightening dream, she had intended to go straight to her mother. However, seeing her parents together made her hesitate. She sadly walked back to her room. Iripia took the cup of water her husband offered her, after which the king patted her to bed. The next day, Queen Iripia woke up very ill. It first started from a headache to her legs getting swollen. The illness persisted for weeks. Upon being given treatment, Iripia wasn't getting any better. Nakoma sat beside her mother's sickbed day and night, waiting for her to get better. Unfortunately, Queen Iripia kicked the bucket. Nakoma couldn't bear her mother's loss. She locked herself in her room for 2 weeks, avoiding every other person. Food was given to her through the window. The king didn't pay much attention to his daughter after her mother's loss. Guilt wouldn't let him approach her. At the end of Nakoma's 2 weeks isolation, she came out of her room, hearing the sounds of drumming and jubilation. She wasn't sure what to think. Why would they be drumming and jubilating after my mom passed away? Nakoma asked herself. She went to the scene and saw the most unbelievable thing she had seen in her entire life. Her jaws dropped without her realizing it. "Daddy, what do you think you are doing?" Nakoma shockingly asked her father at the top of her voice, causing the scene to be silent and the attention of everyone drawn to her. "You're getting married. Why? When did mom pass away? Why are you doing this?" "How could you?" Nakoma said as tears rolled down her eyes. The king ordered his guards to take Nakoma back to her room. At that moment, nothing mattered more to him than the wedding. While she was forced back to her room, heartbroken and lost in thought, Nakoma tried so hard to not suspect her father for being responsible for her mom's death. In the dream she had, the night before her mom fell ill, her father stabbed her mom with a knife. When she ran to her mom to tell her about the dream, she saw her father showing kind gestures to her mom. She thought her mom would be safe in the hands of her father. But getting married just 2 weeks after her mom's death said the complete inverse. He poisoned that water, Nakoma said, crying uncontrollably. "I couldn't help her. My dad killed my mom." Nakoma fell on her knees as she said this. The guards forcefully carried her to her room and locked her in there. A year had passed, yet Nakoma and her father lived like they were not under the same roof. Nakoma's isolation made her want revenge more and more. The king's new wife gave birth to a male child. There was jubilation in the city. At least, the throne will remain in the hands of King Ayo. One of the royal council members whispered to another. The jubilation was not for all. Nakoma was having none of it. The 14-year-old princess was torn apart by depression and want for revenge, which led her into taking drastic actions. Nakoma left the palace and traveled to a distant city where she rose an army of women for herself. The young and vengeful princess went around telling huge and able-bodied women about her history and misfortune, convincing them into going back with her to get her revenge. Nakoma was very decisive when it came to the kind of women she spoke to. She made sure they had a bad history with the male gender and had no families. Nakoma didn't look like her age at all. She was lucky enough to grow and learn very quickly. She was a very smart princess who found favor in the sight of numerous women willing to fight with her. What they didn't know was how drastic her plans were. Nakoma promised the women an entire heritage and a better life once she got to the throne. 2 days before Nakoma's 15th-year-old birthday, she stormed the city of Okada with her army of women and took them to war. Kill only the male gender. There should be no survivors. These were Nakoma's orders to her army. The city of Okada was taken by surprise. Nakoma went straight to the palace with a few female soldiers who stood as her protectors. She got to the room where her stepbrother was kept. Wait outside, she ordered the soldiers and went into the room. Her supposed stepmother, who stood beside the baby as he slept in his cradle, went on her knees and pleaded with Nakoma. "Please, spare me and my son. We will go far away, and you'll never have to hear from us." Before she could finish her statement, Nakoma walked up to the baby in his cradle and stabbed him with a knife until she was sure he was dead. Her stepmother, on the other hand, kept screaming for help. Nakoma quickly cut her throat before she could cry for help a second time. She stormed out of the room with her army behind her. This gave her all the courage she needed. She walked straight to the royal courtyard, where the king and his royal advisors gathered. "The king is mine," Nakoma said to the female soldiers as she pushed open the door. The women, without hesitation, slayed every man that was present at the royal courtyard and beyond. Nakoma took her father to the dungeon, where thieves were kept and tormented. She bound him by chains, drawing patterns on his skin with her sword. "Nakoma, my daughter, please forgive me," the king pleaded. Nakoma's heart was hardened at that point, and there was nothing and no one that could stop her. She made her father confess being responsible for the death of her mother and killed him slowly afterwards. She vowed to never get married because of how her dad betrayed her mom. She also hated the male gender with everything in her. Not having a male child was the reason her dad killed her mom in the first place. The war lasted for 2 days and was finally over, with no traces of males ever existing in the city of Okada. The next day, being Nakoma's 15th-year-old birthday, she was crowned king of Okada. Nakoma changed everything in the system. Okada became a city for only women, ruled by a woman king. Every man who stepped into the city never went out alive. The same was for every male child born there. Oremide was an exception. He was a 6-year-old boy who walked freely on the streets of Okada, not until he was seen by the ruthless king Nakoma. What do you think will become of Oremide? Would King Nakoma spare him, or would she kill him like she killed the other males? Find out in part 2.